created equal. Give me a place to stand, said Archimedes, and I will move the world. These men move the world, and so can we all. Few will have the greatness to bend history, but each of us can work to change a small portion of the event, and in the total, all of these acts will be written in the history of this generation. It is from numberless diverse acts of courage such as these that the belief that human history is thus shaped. Each time a man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance.
Isn't it exciting to be here tonight? We're together at the largest national planning meeting the Order of the Arrow has ever had, planning to deliver the largest event the Order of the Arrow has ever conceived. Imagine, 218 days from now, 15,000 Arrowmen will pack into the arena at MSU to open the conference. The kind of experience our guests have starts with each one of us in this room. Now, before we dive headfirst into planning, I think it's important that we step back for a second. This will be our largest conference ever, yes? But in many ways it will look similar to conferences of the past. There'll be a show most nights, training opportunities, ceremonies, competitions, a trading post, lots of patch trading, and other hallmarks that have defined national OA conferences for decades. What makes this conference unique is that it takes place 100 years after the birth of our fraternity.
100 years ago, the Order of the Arrow was born out of one man's idea that young men should dedicate their lives to the service of other people. The small ceremony that he organized in July of 1915 set off a course of events which impacted the lives of millions of people, and has brought our movement to where it is today. In the 100 years since Dr. E. Erner Goodman made his first ripple in the sea of scouting, it has combined with other ripples and has indeed become a tidal wave. Now, each Arrowman should have a sense of urgency around his own contribution to this movement. Time marches on, and it waits for no one. Each successive moment is one that we will not be able to reclaim. We cannot afford to define the future tomorrow. We must act today. It has taken, or will have taken us, 100 years to get to the 2015 National Order of the Arrow Conference, an event that will last a mere 100 hours. I'd ask you to think about that for just a minute. It will take us, or will have taken us, an entire century to get to the conference, our pinnacle event, which will last a mere 100 hours. Tonight, we will unveil the theme for the 2015 National Conference. This is an important opportunity for us to teach some lessons that we hope each NOAC guest will embody. And the conference will be the launching point for the future of the Order of the Arrow, and will help each one of our Arrowmen, each member, to discover that principle that guides each one of us throughout the unknown. A centennial anniversary for any organization is a prime time to step back and reassess where we've been, where we are today, and the direction in which we are headed in the future. This is a process that's been ongoing for a while as we've made plans for our centennial. As each one of us, as our lodges, as members of the National Order of the Arrow Committee, have assessed the first 100 years and its importance to us, its importance. The issue with this conference, the excitement around this NOAC, is that we will be able to pivot from the first 100 years to the 100 hours that will comprise the actual conference, and then carry that toward the 100 days that will follow NOAC. And the theme will help us to do this. It will embody every aspect, programmatic and otherwise, of a successful conference, and it will also shape the lens through which every one of our members defines, embodies, and appreciates his experience as an airman from August of 2015 and onward.
So you can probably tell that we consider the conference theme to be a whole lot more than some witty phrase on a patch. In fact, the conference theme has three major components: the thematic learning objective, the slogan, and the brand. Most people think of the slogan when they hear the phrase NOAC theme, but all three are central. Let's start with the thematic learning objective. The learning objective is the lesson we want to communicate to each guest at the conference. Most guests will never see the learning objective directly, but it needs to course throughout the entire program. As we begin to plan the conference tomorrow, we each ought to consider, how do we use our programs to help reinforce this lesson to each guest we engage with? The second component is the slogan. The slogan is a catchy, memorable phrase that reminds people of the learning objective. It's what ends up on the patch and what most guests can recite back to you by the end of the conference. The third and final component is the conference brand. You've heard the phrase, "a picture's worth 1,000 words," right? Well, the same applies to the conference theme. The brand is used to help to support the message communicated through the learning objective, and it helps our guests to interpret it in a way more personal. The brand is used as a set of distinct images that creates a stickiness in our guest's memory, and it helps to imprint it so they'll never forget it.
You know, coming up with a theme for this conference was not easy. How do you encapsulate 100 years of history, where we are today, and hopefully an infinite future into two very short sentences? Well, first, we listened. Earlier this fall, the thematics team polled members of the National Committee, key volunteers, as well as every section chief in America to get their impressions of the movement. We started by assessing their experiences in the organization heretofore and their expectations about what the future holds for the Order of the Arrow. In assessing and analyzing these results and this feedback, it became very clear that there were four distinct criteria that would have to comprise a successful theme. The first of which is that the theme must be universal. More than ever, this conference is not just about the 15,000 people who will join us in East Lansing this summer. Rather, it is about the hundreds of thousands of individuals who have spoken our admonition and who have attended conferences of the past. It's the initial ripple in something that will impact every single airman and tens of thousands of scouts and Americans. Indeed, this theme cannot be limited to just one conference. It must speak to the entire scouting movement. The theme must be universal.
Second, the theme must be timeless. This is a defining point for the Order of the Arrow. It's the capstone of our first century of service, and the conference will be the point in which we pivot from our first 100 years to the next. The theme cannot be trapped in 2015, and actually, if Goodman were to walk into the room this evening, the theme should resonate with him. Or in 2115, when a young airman's poring over his OA history holocron as he learns about the first centennial, it should resonate with him too. The theme must be timeless.
Third, the theme must be personal. It has to resonate with each individual. Now, surely a national conference is a tidal wave of excited airmen, but that starts with 15,000 individual voices contributing their ripples to the entire movement. And in fact, this theme has to be something that each one of our guests and each one of our airmen can understand and internalize such that they can embody it in their own lives, both inside as well as outside of Scouting. In fact, this theme is about all of us, it's about each one of us, and it's about none of us at the same time. The theme must be personal.
The last criteria is the theme must be engaging. This conference is not just an event marking off our first 100 years, it's the start of something. The theme is not an empty platitude or a summary. It's a call to action for everyone to leave the conference as different people, to set a new course for our entire movement. The theme has to challenge our entire organization, not just the 10% of us that will be at conference. It's an opportunity to create tomorrow with action today.
The 2015 National Conference Learning Objective is create tomorrow with action today. Every passing day is one that we will never get back. It is our actions, the decisions that we make right now, that will determine what the world looks like tomorrow. The book on the first 100 years has already been written. But what the Order of the Arrow, what Scouting, and what the world looked like tomorrow will be a function of the steps that we take right now. Every day we wake up with the same 24 hours. Each of us has to decide how we will allocate and spend that time. As airmen, we are men of action. So we can choose to take a stand for something of meaning and take action. We have to create the world that we want to see, one comprised of service and brotherly love, by the choices, by the decisions, and by the actions that we take today. Dr. Earner Goodman captured this well in a quote that he made famous about 50 years ago, and you will also recognize it well. It is the things of the Spirit that count. Brotherhood in a day when there is too much hatred at home and abroad. Cheerfulness in a day when the pessimists have the floor. And service in a day when millions are interested only in getting or grasping instead of giving.
You know, Goodman saw how these things of the Spirit helped to bound every airman together and truly shape the future. As an organization, we've been inching toward this time, and now it's time to get out and create tomorrow with action today. This change, this future, it starts with us. A tidal wave begins with one small drop of water. That one little drop, when it hits a pool of water, creates ripples that extend infinitely. That one drop joins a much larger, bigger pool of water and eventually forms a wave large enough, enormous enough to impact anything in its path. But that tidal wave started with one small drop of water. The slogan, "It starts with us," is instructive to each guest that he or she is the beginning of something, a drop in a larger ocean of humanity, from which ripples extend in every direction. The nature of the ripple, singular, collaborative, positive or negative, is entirely up to each of us. There's actually a duality that exists within this theme. Each contribution from an individual is unique and important, and when combined together, they create an enormous movement, an unstoppable, forceful movement. More importantly, the word "it" is ambiguous, intentionally. What starts with each of us is completely open to personal interpretation. Each one of us is allotted the same amount of time each day. Your decision is how to spend that time. You decide what begins with you. But you must remember that something is beginning.
The conference logo supports the same open interpretation. It strongly implies movement, action, and growth emanating from the word it. The concentric circles in the design denote infinity and equality. However, these two are subject to interpretation. Some of you may see ripples of water, other a Wi-Fi symbol. The design necessitates that each one of us interpret the logo through the lens of our own experiences at the conference, in the Order of the Arrow, and Scouting as a whole. Yet, the meaning remains the same. There is movement emanating from the word it. The design spirit harkens from the simple silhouettes of the two immediate past conferences. And yet all three, 2009, 2012, and now 2015, harness the same simple, monochromatic silhouettes that are representative of power and of impact. Yet the 2015 conference logo carries that impact even further beyond one individual or group of individuals to a place that impacts each one of us across the sea of humanity.
And so, this simple concept, fully integrated and consistently communicated to each of our guests, will leave them knowing we must create tomorrow with action today. 100 years ago, it started with a handful of kids hugging a tree on Treasure Island. Tonight, it starts with the 200 of us in this room in a position to create the most memorable, powerful conference in the Order of the Arrow's history. Next summer, it begins with the 15,000 arrowmen who will go out to the world knowing we must create tomorrow with action today. For now, our path is simple. We have 3 days to create the most powerful conference in our order's history. This theme is about action, not philosophizing. It starts with us.